Mario Cristobal just body slammed the eye test narrative.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. We're available on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode, we're going to talk with our special guest about the final stretch of 2026 recruiting. Folks, we're 9 days away from National Signing Day. Miami's got 30 in the class right now. Are there a couple of more flips that could happen between now and December 3rd? We'll talk about the Canes matchup with Pitt because, none of the CFP scenarios or the ACC Championship game scenarios matter if you don't win this weekend, and it's going to be a tough one on the road. And we'll talk about Miami's fate. Now, head coach Mario Cristobal did his weekly appearance this morning on the Joe Rose Show on 104.3 WQAM, and he was asked if, he felt as though he needed not only a win, but a dominant win to impress the CFP committee. And here was Cristobal's answer. He said, "Our expectation during the game is every time we have the ball, we want to score and are going to score. And every time on defense, we'll get a stop." He said, "It doesn't change. Have the ball 8 times, score 6 times. That was the case in the Virginia Tech game. He says, didn't score once because of an errant snap, 2 successive penalties on the other drive that they didn't score on. We took care of business. We controlled everything from the beginning to the end," he said. And then this is the part of the quote that I love. "Football is played on the field. It's not a beauty pageant. Now that we're playing some of our best football, it's what all of us played the game and coached the game for is the result on the field, not the beauty pageant points." And I guess the whole beauty pageant thing is why, even though Miami won the game and controlled the entire game, why some people were talking like that 34-17 win like it was a loss or something. And ESPN had that ridiculous crawl that we talked about yesterday, Miami survives scare. To help us break all of this madness down, we are joined by a man who's an absolute content king and a very good friend of the show, Geo Milian from Who Wants Smoke. He's prolific on his X account at Geo Milian. All right, so, first of all, Geo, what do you make of this whole thing about, because Louis Riddick wouldn't stop talking about it on the game broadcast, the whole eye test, the whole style points thing? I mean, what was your takeaway from that Virginia Tech game?
Well, my immediate takeaway, I would put it like this. Louis Riddick then proceeded afterwards to say, oh, well, the head-to-head between Miami and Notre Dame should matter. So he kind of contradicted himself in terms of his commentary during the game. I found that quite amusing.
Yeah, I mean, it was all, I guess to be fair to Riddick, who I like I was annoyed with his commentary in that game, but I think that now his defense was, during the game, he was kind of speaking for how he thinks the committee is going to look at it, and after the game, he was speaking for himself, I guess is probably how he would explain it.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, so, all right, so Do you what do you expect when the new CFP rankings, Geo, come out on Tuesday night? Miami is 13th in the AP. Now, the AP has Miami behind Vanderbilt. Now, last week, Miami jumped Vanderbilt in the CFP. Vandy, they blew out Kentucky last week. So I guess I'm a little concerned that the CFP committee might leapfrog Vandy back over Miami, but Utah Falls, rightfully so, fell behind Miami in the AP. I'm hoping that happens in the CFP as well.
Yes, so you asked me personally. I look at it like this. I've been tracking it very closely every week, just as much as all the other Miami fans. Here's my thing with Utah. They struggled with a really bad Kansas State team. We're not talking about a Kansas State team that has 8 or 9 wins this year. They're basically sitting under 500 right now, Kansas State.
Yeah, I think 5 wins, I believe.
For their bowl eligibility right now. Kansas State rushed for almost 500 yards on Utah. I don't think a playoff team is allowing 500 rushing yards on them in the final weeks of the regular season. That just screams just not good enough, in my opinion. So do I think Miami leapfrogs yet another team again? Yeah, I think they'll leapfrog Utah. I know some people have the concerns with Vanderbilt as well because of how they looked against Kentucky. I think we have to take just a step back and look at that game. Kentucky is also very similar to that Kansas State team. They're fighting for their bowl eligibility right now. They're not really in the discussion of 7, 8, or 9 wins at this juncture of the season. So I think Miami's number 12 on Tuesday. We'll see. If they are number 12, it's a great spot. It's a great spot. Yes, the magic number is number 10. I've said it since the very first rankings. I know the ACC scenarios and everything that's going on. Still a lot that needs to happen there. I still think Miami has better chances for an at-large spot, and very much could happen. I know people will bring up BYU, but they still got a pretty significant game coming up ahead. So Miami needs 2 ahead of them to move, and there's still plenty of games and chaos that can happen.
Well, okay, so I guess the question would be if, and we'll talk more about the Pitt game later in this episode, but if Miami beats Pitt this weekend, and, assuming Notre Dame beats Stanford, which should also happen, and they're both 10-2, can Miami move close enough to Notre Dame where the committee, and I know the committee does not want to have to do this, but they have admitted that if they can enter the same comparative pool, because they compare teams in clusters of 3 to 4, and they're out to this point has been, well, we can't weigh the head-to-head between Miami and Notre Dame because they haven't been in the same comparative pool. Do you think Miami can move close enough to Notre Dame that the committee is forced to actually honor that head-to-head result?
Never say never. I just don't think it'll happen this week. And it's funny because I was joking about this with a buddy in a group chat just the other day. He said, well, if Miami moves up to 12 and then, Notre Dame's at number 9, then, finally maybe they'll factor in the head-to-head. And I said, just wait for it. The committee's going to say 9, 10, and 11, not 12.
I've had the same thought. I mean, listen, there's a finite number of 10 of 2 lost teams, right? I mean, there's a group of like 4 or 5. How come that's not the comparative pool? Like, how come the comparative pool isn't like you've got whatever it is, 4 or 5 teams with 2 losses? Shouldn't that be the pool, not the arbitrary whatever it is? I don't even know how they define the pool.
No, I absolutely agree with you, Donno.
All right, so you mentioned, I guess, the unlikely ACC championship scenario. And listen, I wouldn't rule out anything when it comes to ACC chaos, Geo. Miami would need a lot to happen here. But if you take a look at this, is courtesy of PFF College. So, you got the scenarios for Virginia, SMU, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech. By the way, Virginia and SMU, that's the most likely ACC championship matchup because those are the only 2 teams that strictly control their destiny. But if you look at what has to happen for Miami to get into the ACC championship game, obviously there are 4 different scenarios here. Miami has to win in all 4 of these. So if Miami wins, plus SMU beats Cal, Duke loses to Wake Forest, and Virginia loses to Virginia Tech, Miami's in. Second scenario, Miami wins, plus Virginia beats Virginia Tech, Duke loses to Wake, SMU loses to Cal. Cal just fired their coach, by the way. NC State wins, plus Syracuse wins. Miami gets in. Scenario number 3, Miami wins, plus Duke wins, Virginia loses, SMU loses, and NC State wins. Or finally, Miami wins, plus SMU loses, Duke loses, Virginia loses, Syracuse and NC State both win. I'm going to have like all these scenarios written out on a bingo card this weekend, Geo, hoping we hit one of these.
I'll be honest with you. If I had to say the more likely of those 4 scenarios, it's probably scenario 1. And the reason being so is Virginia, with the struggles they've had with their quarterback out with his injury. If Virginia Tech can run the ball like they did this past weekend, they could have a chance. I don't want to say a shot, but a chance to possibly beat Virginia. And then in terms of Duke and Wake Forest, nothing would surprise me because Wake Forest has surprised a couple teams this year.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And by the way, Virginia, obviously Virginia is better than Virginia Tech this year, but Virginia Tech has owned that rivalry. I think it's either 8 of
Yes.
the last 9 or 9 of the last 10 that have been won by the Hokies. So anything is possible in that rivalry game. So all right, we're going to turn the page on to looking at this game with Pittsburgh on Saturday, because Miami is going up, and Miami are favored by 6.5 points for what that's worth. But you're going on the road. You're going into the cold, and you're going up against a team that, outside of a game against Notre Dame that they didn't even want to win because their head coach said it, they've been really, really good since inserting Mason Heintschel at quarterback. You want to keep it locked right here. The great Geo Milian is with us, and we're only getting started on this brand new Locked On Canes. Folks, the holiday season is fully here, and it means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for your guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is already here to help you make your space shine. The best part? You don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. Mario might need a couple of those. Folks, I couldn't believe how fast everything ships when you order from Wayfair. It's going to be here just in time for the holidays, guys. It's easy on their site to find pieces that actually fit your style. Nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. Do not miss out on Wayfair's early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com, and the sale will end on December 7th. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Alex Donno alongside Geo Milian, who's nice enough to join us. All right, so Geo, as mentioned, every single scenario where Miami can sneak into the college football playoff or sneak into the ACC Championship game involves a win this Saturday. How do you view this matchup against Pittsburgh, and do you think Miami's going to close out their second consecutive 10-plus win season?
I think yes. I know it gives some people a scare because of Pittsburgh having a freshman quarterback. You go back to that 2017 season, how they upset that year for Miami with a freshman quarterback by the name of Kenny Pickett. I'm sure many Cane fans remember that all too well. Mason Heintschel, he's had a really good season since they've inserted him for Eli Holstein, who had a pretty decent season last year for Pittsburgh. It's been quite the change for them. He's not the only change in that the backfield of the offense for Pittsburgh, actually, that's a true freshman. They have a true freshman running back right now who's kind of emerging as a star, especially coming out of the Georgia Tech game. Jakyrian Turner, who ran for over 200 yards against Georgia Tech. He's actually from Wildwood, Florida, same area as Miami safety Zachariah Poyser. There's a few Florida guys on that roster. Desmond Reed, local guy here in South Florida. He's been banged up a little bit this year. Still kind of up in the air if he's going to play against Miami this weekend, but you have to account for him if he is going to play. He's a dynamic player in general. He's really good receiver and running back. His combo deal right there. And then they have 3 good receivers too. Got 3 guys that are over 500 receiving yards on the season. So they have a trio in that offense. 2 of those guys actually from South Florida themselves, Raphael Williams and Kataris Hicks. So Pittsburgh, they like to come down to Florida or South Florida in general. They pluck a few guys and insert them into the roster every year or every couple of years. So I think their offense is going to pose challenges for Miami's defense. Not so much their offensive line, but the skill position guys that they have, Miami has to be prepared for. And then on Pittsburgh's defense, I would say the defensive line, not particularly any stars, but a very good and solid group overall. Their linebackers are the stars of that defense. They have possibly the best trio of linebackers in the ACC. They're really good.
Yeah, Pitt, they call their linebackers the Sharks. It's an area that Pat Narduzzi always recruits and coaches really well. I think in terms of what would concern me most about Pitt, you mentioned Des Reed. We know how it goes. When you've got a banged up player, Miami's on the schedule, they're going to get some of that like super soldier serum into Des Reed. He's going to be Barry Sanders on Saturday. Like I feel like he's probably going to end up playing, and that's the guy on Pitt's offense that scares me most. I mean, you kind of think about having to scheme for Des Reed is like opposing defenses having to scheme and prepare for Malachi Toney. Like he's so dynamic. He can affect the game in multiple ways. Mason Heintschel is obviously having a great year. Now, in terms of like Miami going up against opposing running games, Miami's defense has had success as long as the quarterback is not a big threat in the running game, which is not going to be probably the case with Heintschel. So that makes me feel good. Going up against a freshman quarterback, despite how successful he's been in most of his games, I feel like Miami's pass rush can make him uncomfortable. A really good point to me, Gio, and it's something to think about heading into this game. I talk a lot with former Miami center Kelvin Harris, who watches opponents really closely. Now Kelvin is the most optimistic guy on the planet, so yes. he's always going to give me that Miami spin. But he made a great point to me about Pat Narduzzi in Pittsburgh, right? You think about like the way Miami lost against Louisville. Jeff Brom understood, like, we can't just beat these guys talent for talent. I need to have 3 quarterbacks on the field at once. I need to throw the kitchen sink at them. Stuff like that is not Narduzzi's MO. Like, Narduzzi is just going to go into every game thinking, we're going to line them up and we're just going to beat you. We're going to win, 11 of our one-on-one matchups. That's the way he approaches every game. And I don't think that's the recipe to beat Miami. I think you have to throw the kitchen sink at Miami if you're Pittsburgh. And I don't expect Narduzzi to do that because it's not in his DNA.
I would absolutely agree with that assessment from my good friend Kelvin. Actually, I talk with Kelvin quite a bit here and there. He's a really funny guy, too, by the way.
Oh, he's the best.
A couple years back. He's hilarious.
Yeah. So, all right. So Miami favored by 6.5 points. Do you think, is that number about right for you? Because I'll be honest, going on the road to Pitt, I thought it would be like a 3.5 type of deal. Miami's essentially giving a touchdown. So again, we've seen a lot of inflated, point spreads in Miami's favor this year. I feel like they do that on purpose. If Miami wins, like, oh, they didn't cover the spread. There's a little conspiracy to that, in my opinion. But what do you think about that 6.5 point line?
I think maybe a little too high, considering all the variables coming into this game. However, I think what helps Miami coming into this game is the fact that it's a noon game instead of a night game. The weather will factor into some extent. We've seen this before in the past with the Hurricanes. You hope they can get over that hump of, the late season cold weather blues. I think they can, but I could see Miami winning it. I just think it may be more of a tough, gritty battle than what Miami fans would want at this point of the season, but it's just the type of team that Pittsburgh is.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and hopefully it doesn't come down to this, but if Miami does win this game and they've got 10 wins for consecutive seasons, haven't done that since 2002, 2003, but they miss out on the CFP and they miss out on the ACC Championship game, would you look at this as a successful season if it involves missing out on, the meaningful postseason stuff? Because I do think it would be an important building block. I mean, to win consecutive 10-plus game years for the first time in over 20 years. Like, I know, again, there's going to be fans who are disappointed no matter what if you don't make the CFP. But I think if you zoom out, I think there could be some comfort even taken in a 10-win year.
I could agree with that. And reason being so, it shows consistency for the program, because the program has averaged maybe 7 or 8 wins for the last 20-something years before Cristobal came in, and then would have that random 9 or 10 win season every 5 to 7 years along that span. So to have 2 10-win seasons back to back, yes, it's definitely an accomplishment. Would they have come short of the goal? Yes, the goal was get in the ACC or get in the playoffs, one of those two. I think everyone would prefer the playoffs at this point, considering how conference championships are being treated.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other ball that just every AD in the country is going to have to unravel this offseason, whether conference championships are even worth playing anymore. You ask me, I think not. I think go with your highest winning percentage conference team as your champion, because if I'm certain teams that are already in the playoff and you're playing that conference championship in these next 2 weeks, and you're already guaranteed that spot depending on your seating, why are you going to risk it? Just heal up. What, you lose a game, whatever. But yes, absolutely. I think it's an accomplishment for Miami. I know some people will be upset, but 10 wins is 10 wins, and this program has not seen that consistently in a long time.
All right, well, when we come back, let's talk some recruiting because National Signing Day is coming up next Wednesday. It's going to be here before you know it. And there are a handful of possible flip targets on Miami's radar. You also have to wonder, are we going to keep everybody that's currently in the class? Because, yeah, flipping can be a two-way street. You want to keep it locked right here. Geo Milian is with us on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, the only ticket app that I use is Game Time, and it's simple. I'm getting the best features, the best prices, and I'm not getting any nonsense like hidden fees that are added. There's none of that on Game Time. Guys, college football is the absolute best, but yeah, sometimes actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. You get none of that on Game Time, and that's why Game Time is what we use. The app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And the feature that I love the most about Game Time is you can get a panoramic view in the app right there from your seat before you buy. So you know exactly what you're going to be looking at, folks. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go! Download the Game Time app today. Folks, thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen, and thank you to the Everydayers for making the Locked On Podcast Network #1, because we couldn't do it without you guys being with us every single day. Your interactions, your YouTube comments, even the angry ones. We appreciate all you guys, whether you're the Canes lovers or the Canes haters. We appreciate everyone for helping all of the great hosts here on Locked On make this network #1. All right, so Geo Milian joins us. So Geo, Miami already within the month of November has, flipped 5 recruits from other schools. There were a couple in late October as well. So it's been a busy last 30 days or so. How busy are these final 9 games going to be? Are there any other recruits you think Miami can flip?
I don't get the sense that it'll be as busy as it has been for the past month, but I am expecting one more flip for Miami at the minimum. That would be 4-star running back Amari Latimer, who is the grandnephew of the great Donno Latimer, who played nose tackle for the Hurricanes in the late 70s. So I expect Miami to end up flipping him from Wisconsin. Tennessee still very much in that battling with Miami. Ohio State was kind of in there for a bit. They went in a different direction. They took a different running back. They didn't want to wait out the process with Latimer. So Ohio State's lost Miami's game there. And just running down some of the other guys that still remain. Derek Cooper, I know that's a very well-discussed recruit throughout this process, him and Calvin Russell. And those two situations, very NIL-driven recruitments, unless something drastically changes with the approach from both parties, actually. It's not just one side.
Right.
I expect those two to potentially stick with their commitments to their respective schools in Texas and Syracuse, unless something changes here in the next 9 days, or Miami changes their mind, or the kids change their mind about just where the numbers are at. Then is what it is. Wide receiver wise, so I know everyone has discussed very much the situation of Jalen Lott, the Texas legacy committed to Oregon. I would classify that more as a long shot at this point. I know Miami has had contact with other receivers. They're still very open and receptive to the receiver market. We'll see. I know one name that they've really liked before in the past, and his situation is really interesting because he's committed to Auburn right now, 5-star receiver Jace Matthews. Not saying it happens, but Miami had a lot of interest over the summer before he ended up going with Auburn. He was expected to flip to LSU. LSU has all this coaching uncertainty, or maybe not.
As does Auburn.
Yeah, as does Auburn. So maybe LSU does not have the coaching uncertainty. it's funny enough that I mentioned over a month ago when we were on the spaces with Canes Jones, I said about the Lane Kiffin situation. I said, hey, I think he'd take the LSU job before the Florida job, and that may actually happen. We have to see. And Miami's done it tight end, offensive line. They've had contact with Brett Kolojay and Grant Wise. Kolojay, very unlikely to happen. Grant Wise, maybe a late surprise. They've still had contact there, but I've heard some discussion of just culture-wise and how it fits in and whatnot between recruit and school. So where a lot of the movement happens going forward is defensive line. So I do expect Miami to have a drop there in Anthony Kennedy. I've been sharing that for some time now. It's not currently in the plans for the future at defensive tackle.
Are we thinking Mizzou there? Is that where Kennedy is probably going to end up?
Very, very likely, yes. So Mizzou, for him, Mizzou's not even done trying to, I shouldn't say trying to pick at Miami's class because Miami's just sort of moving on from Kennedy, but they do have interest in Ashari Charles. I know LSU has some interest in Ashari Charles as well. So Miami's played some defense in that recruitment. I think that's one that they could end up holding on to him ultimately. However, the big fish targets that remain, there's 4. One of them I think is just very, very unlikely, just the way things have transpired for months now. That's Nolan Wilson, the 4-star defensive lineman from Mississippi who committed to Alabama. The relationships are very strong there between Wilson and Alabama. I don't see Miami coming out on top of that. However, the 3 main ones to focus on going forward, and yes, they have some interest in other guys, but these are their 3 main guys to this point. Tank Jones, Bryce Perry-Wright, and Lamar Brown, right? Yeah.
Yes. Lamar Brown, LSU.
Lamar Brown.
Yeah.
So of those 3, I've mentioned this for months now, brought it up again recently in my private board, that if there is a recruit I am watching more specifically closely as we get down the stretch here of the final 9 days would be Tank Jones. Do I think it happens? I don't know at this point. There's still a lot of deliberation going on back and forth, but Miami's still very much been in it throughout the entire process. He's visited Miami multiple times this season. They're still in contact, so you have to let that situation play itself out. And the other 2 positions, linebacker and defensive back. So linebacker, they are open to potentially taking one more, but they don't want to overextend themselves. So yes, there is a linebacker locally that they've expressed some interest in recently, and Kenneth Goodwin, who's originally from the West Coast, but I've heard that situation is not exactly set in stone. They have some interest in a JUCO DB and Assad Chapman. That's still very much up in the air too. He may not even take a visit to Miami at all this week. So, and if a visit does happen, they would have to be midweek by about Wednesday for anything like motion-wise to happen there. And last 2, Blake Stewart. Oh, what a roller coaster of recruitment. There's several times that Miami felt that they would have him, which is dating back to the spring, the summer, and it's like they have momentum, and then a school comes in late. Like Clemson decided to come in late after they missed 2 guys at safety. Georgia decides now at the final hours, hey, you know what? We actually want you now. Tough, but I don't expect it to be Miami at this point unless something changes over the next few days. And Miami still is involved with Justice Fitzpatrick, Minka Fitzpatrick's younger brother, who plays at St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale, Florida here. That one's going to be very tough. And the tune has changed a lot there. Early on in like September, beginning of October, there was a lot of discussion that it would be more likely he would end up like at a Ohio State or Miami rather than Georgia. That's totally shifted in November. That just many people expect him to stick through with his commitment to the Dogs.
Oh, this is tremendous info as always here from Geo Milian. And just before we wrap up, couple injury notes that Mario Cristobal laid on us this morning. CJ Daniels, wide receiver, defensive tackle David Blay, and cornerback OJ Frederic. Cristobal expects them to be back this week against Pitt. And also Jacoby Thomas. Gio, we got the good news right after the game that Jacoby's x-rays were negative. So do you think, you never know for sure with Mario, but do you think all 4 of those play this weekend?
I think one of them doesn't. I'd probably say OJ. I think
I could see that.
Almost there, but I think might get held off. Jacoby Thomas, we'll see. I think that'll be one of those game time decisions.
Well, great stuff as always. And by the way, Geo, let people know best place they can find you, because when it comes to Who Wants Smoke, when it comes to all the stuff you do on X Spaces, of course, you got your private board as well. Let people know the best place to find you for all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Everyone could go follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Geo Milian. And you could watch me going hand-to-hand combat with several Irish fans who
Oh my God,
crazy takes. I've been going at them for the past week. They can't stand me. They literally search up my account now just to argue.
I've had some of that as well. Like I notice like 50% of my mentions, it's from a Shamrock bio. Like they all have Shamrocks in their bio, and I've been flooded. But you know, it's fun. I enjoy the discourse. Make sure you follow Geo on X at Geo Milian. Make sure you guys smash the like button, subscribe to Locked On Canes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.